welcome to the semifinal of Italian Championship of Debate in English. Okay? I think you are proud of it. We are very proud to be here and to listen to you. So we wait for this debate, and we are sure it will be a very, very good debate, an amazing debate. So let's start with reading the motion that you know very well, but I have to read it to be sure there's no mistake about it. Okay? So, Tab Master, yes, okay. Public broadcasting should be abolished. Okay? Okay. First of all, some things to say by my colleagues. Nothing else? Okay? So, I will keep time, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, ready. Ready? Oh. So, first speaker from competition team, bottom, please take the floor. Thank you.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Simona Botta, the first speaker of the proposition team. And I would like to start by defining a few terms of the motion because they are fundamental. First of all, public. Public means that it's related to governments and the services that the governments provide. Broadcasting means refers to all the programs published on the radio or on television. And altogether, public broadcasting refers to all the programs on radio and TV that relate to the governments and that are owned by the governments. Why are we talking about this motion today, especially today? Well, it is surely a hot topic for everyone. For example, it just happened on the Liberation Day from Nazifascism on the 25th of April. It just happened a disaster because Antonio Scurati was called to give a speech about the day, about the memory of the day, and the contract was being confirmed because its presence was confirmed. But then the contract was suspended because of editorial problems. This was the published reason, the public reason. But when the program actually happened, Serena Bertone, who was the presenter, read the speech anyway. And what did the speech say? Well, the speech basically accused the government of being fascist. Yesterday, the provediment against Serena, because she read the speech anyway, was officialized and it was put in practice. Aren't we supposed to have overcome censorship? Isn't it exactly what censorship is? A speech, no thank you, a speech which should have been given but was stopped because of what it was going to say. It was read anyway, and then a provediment against her who read the speech anyway was taken. Isn't it exactly censorship? So we believe that, yes.
Isn't eliminating a whole broadcast even censorship?
No, because there are still present the private broadcast, the private broadcasting systems, and they would still have the opportunity to say what they want because they are not controlled by the state. We believe that the abolition of public broadcasting should be applied not only on Italy, as we brought an example from Italy, but everywhere in the world, because the misuse of public broadcasting is spread everywhere. One example, which I'm going to explain further in our first argument, is what happened to the BBC in the USA in the 1950s, but also with what is happening with the Russian propaganda right now in this crucial situation. The citizens are not able to see things as they are because the government controls what information is passed. So how would this put in practice? Well, the public broadcasting companies and systems would be put on sale for the private companies to buy it. We believe that this abolition, no thank you, this abolition would only help the society because its abolition prevents censorship, because public broadcasting is too instrumentalized, and because its abolition will lift the weight from the shoulders of the citizens. I'm going to explain the first argument, which says that the abolition of public broadcasting would prevent censorship. Basically, as I already demonstrated, public broadcasting is controlled by the state. This means that the state controls what is said on these systems, what is said on these programs, and basically stops what goes against the state. This is what happened in the example that I brought before, but it also happens in Russia, because information about war or the political situation is not, just a second, is not given in all, but it is only given or nothing at all. It is not given at all, or it is only given in a part. Yes?
Are you aware of the fact that in your proposal, the most important voice of the country, the one of the state, would be silenced?
It would not be silenced, it would only be transferred to private companies, because private companies will still exist, private broadcasting will still exist, and it will still have the chance to talk and to speak. So I was talking about the example of Russia, but this does not only happen in an apparent democratic government, but for example it also happened in Italy with the example of Antonio Scurati, but it also happened in the years. For example, in the 1950s in USA, Marlowe was a journalist who who did services published then on the BBC, which is a public broadcasting program. He interviewed a lot of people with different political opinions and with different ideas, but it became a problem when the senator McCartney gave a speech in the parliament. He was firmly against communism, and he diffused the Red Scare. What is the Red Scare? Where it is also called McCarthyism. And basically, if one was suspected of being communist or of sympathizing with communism, they could be imprisoned. So Marlowe, in this way, who offered the opinions of all the people, because he interviewed a lot of people with different ideas, was censored. And yes, he continued anyway, but the point is that he was censored by the government because of this Red Scare which was diffused. No, thank you. So, what is the impact on the society? It can be considered on two levels, both the political one and on the information given to the citizens. In fact, the political impact is that censorship, which is something that should not exist and that should be forbidden, is still present. It's still present in those states in which it is formally forbidden, but it is present in general, and this is especially a problem when it comes to delivering information to the ones who listen and who watch those public programs. So the point, we believe that this abolition, the abolition of public broadcasting would only bring advantages to the society, because its abolition prevents censorship, because it is too instrumentalized, and because its abolition will lift the weight from the shoulders of the citizens. Thank you for listening.
minutes and 49 seconds. Okay? Okay? Okay. opposition team, Giacomelli.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1, now. So, quoting the proposition team, censorship should not exist. And we also believe in this, but the thing is that they have greatly contradicted themselves in saying this, because they're saying that the public broadcasting is censorshiping people, but isn't abolishing a whole broadcast huge censorship. In our opinion, it is, and this was also noted with our point, and it was brought an example of Russian propaganda, but we would like to highlight that the Russian situation is a completely different situation, because there is a totalitarianism state. So the problem is not just the broadcast, abolishing the broadcast, but it's a whole problem. In the way that Russia does propaganda is not only through public broadcast, but through so many other things, and also public broadcast. Public broadcast is not the only broadcast that is controlled by the Russian, but all of the broadcasts are controlled by the Russians. Thank you.
But do you recognize that the public broadcasting in Russia is a mean of instrumentalization and censorship that prevents the Russian from knowing the truth?
Yes, but just like the public broadcasts in Russia, everything else, even the private broadcasts. So what would we do? We just eliminate the public ones, and the private ones would still do propaganda. It's totally useless. And it was brought to us a sort of model that the current public broadcast would be put on sale and then transferred to private broadcasts. But how is this going to happen? Who is the state going to willingly give up their ownership of the broadcast? I really don't think so. Our team doesn't think so. And also, what would happen if we transferred the public broadcasts to the private ones? So we want to differentiate completely the public ones from the private ones, because the public ones have the duty of saying an objective truth, and then the private ones have the right of expressing political opinions and polarized opinions. So transferring the public broadcast to the private ones would just stop their voices, stop their polarized opinions, and just give another objective truth. How is this going to work? And also, it was brought an example of the 1950s of the BBC, but we want to highlight that thankfully it has been 80 years, and freedom of speech has greatly increased, and it has greatly progressed. So we do not, no thank you. So we do not believe that this example in the democratic world, in the democratic countries, this is still valid. I will go on to expose our team line. We want to highlight that, no thank you, an Ipsos poll of 2023 in trustworthiness of news highlighted that 93% of the public broadcast news are reliable, and said only 47% of the private ones are reliable. So we want to tell you that what characterizes public broadcast is that they have the duty, the legal duty of saying objective truth, and then the private ones, they can say the truth, but they can also give out opinions, political, polarized opinions, and that is completely right for them to do. So public broadcasts are actually not harmful in the way that the proposition team would want to make you believe. In fact, they don't want to manipulate. And the Russia case that they brought is completely different. No, thank you. Public broadcasts are actually really good and crucial for our society in order to be able to give out objective truths, which are essential for citizens to then include in their framing of creating a critic opinion, because they have the public broadcasts that are telling objective truth, they are telling the facts of what happened in a certain situation. And then you have private news outlets that are going to give opinions, maybe left or right-wing opinions, or in general more polarized opinions, so that a person can look at the objective truth, they can look at the fact, and then look at the opinion of a certain person, the opinion of another person, in order to be able to have a full knowledge of what the fact and different opinions, and to create their own personal opinion. For example, let's
as an example of somewhere where it doesn't happen, where we don't have public broadcast, that is America. And in fact, there, the two most popular news outlets are extremely polarized, and we will see in our next arguments how that is extremely bad, and actually the public broadcast would bring benefit to the USA. So we will defend our positions with three argumentations. The first one, which is it's only the public broadcasts that are legally bound to being truthful, which I will be explaining. The second one that says that abolishing public broadcasts brings polarization of information. And the third one, that abolishing a broadcast is censorship, which will be explained by our second speaker. So, explaining our first argument, it's only the broadcasts that public broadcasts that are legally bound to being truthful. By European law, every state has to follow democracy and security standards and also respect human rights. Therefore, public broadcasts, being state-owned, have to respect the same standards. So this goes on to show how public broadcasting is even more bound, is even more likely to tell objective truths and non-biased opinions. No, thank you. So it's more likely to report factual news and truth, being held at a completely different standard than private ones, because they can be legally denounced for not following these values, while instead the private ones are allowed to have their own opinions. In fact, let's think of scenarios in which public broadcasting, let's say, it could be biased. First of all, it would be dramatically and drastically criticized by public opinions of other private networks, of other private broadcasts in general, and it would be also so drastically that it would be impossible for them to keep up their work, to keep on going, because the critics will be too much, and also the citizens will just not trust the outlet anymore and stop watch unless there is a change. And also, this is not nearly enough to completely abolish an institution that has been going on for 100 years, such as public broadcasting. In fact, you have not given us a way in a world in which, if there is a problem, we cannot just change the problem. Like, for example, change the director of the journal, of the broadcast. Also, public broadcasts are the only one actually risking law trials for being biased, while private-owned broadcast news outlets have the right to an opinion, whatever it is, and they cannot be trialed for stating political polarized opinions, because that is given to them. So we, in our line, we specify how abolishing is not at all justified, and actually public broadcasting news and private broadcasting news are essential to cooperate in order to give the public the best information possible. Thank you.
8 minutes and 22 seconds. Ready? So please, second speaker from opposition team, Carlo, please, what do you want?
I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon, I'm Erika Gallo, the second speaker of the proposition team. Before starting to explain our last two arguments, I'd like to rebut what the opposition team has said. Well, first of all, they stated that censorship should not exist, and that's exactly what we stand by. And they said that abolishing the public broadcasting would be censorship. However, as we explained in our model, public broadcasting would be put on sale. Therefore, it wouldn't just disappear. Therefore, this wouldn't be exactly censorship. However, censorship is present in public broadcasting as it is now, in the way that is used now. And that's exactly why we want to abolish it. They also said that the Russian propaganda is a different situation, and because it is a totalitarianism. This means, no thank you, that there are other things that are used for propaganda. However, public broadcasting is still one of them, and for this reason, at least public broadcasting should be abolished. They also said that public broadcasting has the duty to say objective truth, and that's exactly true. It has the duty to do it. Just a second. It has the duty to do it. However, it doesn't, because if it was objective, censorship wouldn't be present. Yes, please.
Following your reasoning, if public broadcasting is used so much by the state to indulge an idea on the public, then why, based on your model, would they give it up so easily and put it on sale so easily? What is the incentive for them?
We are just saying that it should be abolished, and it's not impossible that they do it, but it's highly probable. But it's probable, and it would be right to do it because of our argumentations. And they said also that the 90% of news that are present in public broadcasting are reliable. However, we want to highlight that reliable is different from objective. And also, we want to ask you, what are the information that are put on this public broadcasting? Are the information and news that the governments want to be put on the news? Therefore, they might be true, that 95% might be reliable. However, it's only a part of the information that, no thank you, that are present. Are only the ones that the government wants to convey to the populations, are only a part. And also they said that it's something negative to have political opinions in private broadcasting. However, that is not true, because having different political opinions on private broadcasting is actually positive, because this brings to debate, this brings to no thank you, this brings to a debate which is necessary in our society. But now I'm going to explain our last two arguments. Well, first of all, it is too instrumentalized. And that's because public broadcasting is instrumentalized by governments, because they use this medium only for what it's an advantage for them. And this is because they want to be always a step ahead of the others, but they do it in the wrong way. They do it in an unfair way, and because they abuse of their power. They do things that are morally and ethically incorrect. One of them is censorship, which is what we explained in our first argument. For example, also in Italy, there was a par condicio, which is an agreement that allowed all political parties to have the same amount of time to speak on TV. And they also allowed journalists to make uneasy questions to political parties. However, the government decided to change this agreement. Therefore, just a second. Therefore, the government has an unlimited amount of time to speak on TV, while the other parties have a limited amount of time to speak. And also journalists can't make uneasy questions to the government. And this is deeply unfair.
So if the situation is so bad, the state wants to manipulate so much the public, why was the park condition read on national television on RAI by journalists?
Because RAI is public broadcasting, therefore it's controlled by the state. Of course, they wanted to be read by. They wanted to not to be changed. It's the journalist's right not to want it to change. In fact, they are protesting against it. But this is still happening, and this is still a problem, and this is still not changing. And they could do this only because they own public broadcasting. They could take this advantage only because of this. And this is called propaganda. And citizens in this way cannot have the possibility and the right to access to the objective information that public broadcasting should give them. And in this way, they also can be easily manipulated because they don't have access to this objective information that they should have. And lastly, its abolition will lift a weight from the shoulders of the citizens. Also, for the reasons stated in the previous arguments, lots of people don't use public broadcasting anymore. However, they still pay for the taxes on public broadcasting. For example, in Italy there is the Canone RAI, and everyone pays for it. And why, we want to ask you, why should they keep on paying on a service that doesn't do what it should? That it doesn't provide objective information, that it doesn't do its job, that it compromises censorship, and that is instrumentalized by the governments. Therefore, citizens don't have the right access to information. Why should they keep paying this? Its abolition would actually lift this weight from their shoulders. And in fact, we state by devotions that says that public broadcasting should be abolished because its abolition prevents censorship, it is too instrumentalized, and its abolition will lift a weight from the shoulders of the citizens. Thank you.
11 minutes and 42 seconds. Okay? Okay? Sì. Second speaker from opposition team Calabrese. Please, anyone.
So my speech will start in 3, 2, 1, now. Dear judges, nothing they stated is exclusive to public broadcast, and nothing they stated actually give even one reason to why we should abolish only public broadcast. And this was their burden, to show how public broadcast is so harmful, so this should be abolished. In fact, everything they stated actually goes to both sides of the house, to private broadcast and to public broadcast. Therefore, following their reason, there should exist any broadcast at all, and we should abolish everything, basically. In fact, first of all, what they stated is that public broadcasts are not reliable and biased, and I will debunk this in 3 ways. First of all, my previous teammates have explained how actually public broadcasting is the only one that is bounded by law to be democratic, because the state has to follow the human rights and also the sense of community and democracy. Therefore, also everything that is state-owned should follow those rules, as she explained of the UA. Also, it is
Yeah,
important, no thank you, it is important that we should have a lot of information. In fact, I would like to state how you contradicted yourself 4 times during this debate in only 2 speeches, because you stated that the public broadcast
Yeah.
doesn't give you, no thank you, an objective information, but you agreed 2 times with our data that stated that actually 93% of all the information of public broadcasts are actually objective. Therefore, what do you believe, that they are objective or not? Yes, thank you.
Are you aware that reliable is not a synonym for objective?
Reliable means that you can rely on them, therefore that you can trust them. Meaning that you can trust the information, it means that it's the truth, therefore it is objective. But thanks for the POI. Now, I would like to state also that they said, and I quote, censorship should be forbidden. This quote only this quote gives all of the debate to our side. Why? Because they say that censorship is so wrong that it should be forbidden. But isn't eliminating a whole broadcast, the whole voice of the state, the only way through TV that the state can explain their voice, eliminating it isn't just censorship the voice of the state? Therefore, aren't you imposing a censorship, no thank you, even more greater than the one done by the state, even if they are not, but if they did, they are doing right now? So this whole point of censorship should be permitted does not exist on your side of the house, but I will explain this better on my last argument. Now, talking about your model. Your model states that the state will actually autonomously put their public broadcast onto sale. First of all, if they stated times and times again that the state actually cares so much about public broadcasting because they use it to actually manipulate society, they care so much about it. Therefore, why should they put on sale the actual public broadcast if they care so much about it? But also, you stated that the moment in which they are put on sale, they will become private. But wouldn't they just have the same bias at the base? You stated that public broadcasts have a bias. Even if you put them on sale, they still will have the same bias because they will have the same journalist on them, the same director on them. You're just changing the owner of the company, but still the people that are working there are the same, therefore the bias will be the same. Therefore, you are not bringing, and no thank you, any solution to the problem that you propose to us. But now, also, you stated times and times again that having different political POIs is useful. And again, this goes to our side of the house, because what we are saying is that the status quo is good because we have different point of views. Private broadcasts have different political opinions brought on TV and to radios, while public broadcasts actually puts the information that are more reliable. Therefore, you have something that is more objective given to you by public broadcast, but you can also inform you more through private broadcasts that have a political opinion to them. Therefore, on our side of the house, you have actually more difficult political point of view. Therefore, if you state that having different political point of view is useful, you are actually stating that our status quo that we are promoting is actually better than what you are promoting to us. And also you talked about the propaganda, but again, all of this goes into saying that actually there are more truth spread on the public broadcast, as we explained through data, than with the private one. So now I would like to talk about my second argument, that is about abolishing public broadcast leads to the polarization of information. Dear judges, let's imagine our first argument is false, and public broadcasts are not checked and therefore truthful. Let's imagine to put ourselves in the world they are depicting, in a world where only private broadcasts are allowed. What would that mean? We will only have an increase of bias. People will only have access to polarized information because we will only have broadcasts that say public opinion, political opinion, and not the actual truth. And this is what is already evident in No Thank You in the USA. In America, 2 out of 3 persons stated that they find it difficult to properly inform themselves. But why? Because without a public broadcasting, as it is now in the USA, giving out the real information, we leave the floor to the private ones that are obviously more controlled. Again, the private ones are actually more biased than the public one because they are owned privately, therefore they follow the ideas of the private owner and not of the state and the entire situation. For example, in the USA, we have a dichotomy of information. We have Fox News, there is right-winged, and NBC, there is left-winged. But we do not have even one broadcast because there are no public broadcasts that are actually reliable and objective. The impact is that finding real news becomes critically hard, and most people fall into the rabbit hole of biased information through party-driven broadcasts. Do we want to live in such a world? Proposition likes that word, but us, as oppositional, actually hate it. But most of all, now continuing on our third and last argument. This argument will also rebut everything stated by the proposition team until now. In fact, what is censorship? Censorship, by definition of Oxford, is the act of silencing a voice. The moment in which you abolish something, you are silencing it. So, if we follow the proposition proposal, the moment in which you abolish any broadcast, not even the public one, but any broadcast, even the private one, you are censoring it. Therefore, by saying that they want to abolish the public broadcast, proposition team is proposing the censorship of the state. Why? Because we have explained how the public broadcast is the voice used by the state. And the state, by definition, it's the representation of law and its population. So what proposition is doing is silencing the only voice that has, by law, the burden to be as democratic as possible. As stated times and times again during this debate, anything state-owned has to obey to human rights because the state has to obey to human rights, sense of community and democracy. So side proposition wants to silence the only voice that has to be democratic. It is clear how their censorship is not only wrong but doesn't benefit anyone because we're depriving society from the broadcast that should represent them. So, on their side of the house, we have a censorship of the state, polarizing infos, therefore you have no objective truths on the radio and on TV, and democracy is not the main objective of any broadcast. On their side of the house, there is not even one single benefit of their proposal. On the status quo, instead, we have brought to you many examples of why it is beneficial and why we should never abolish the public broadcast. And for these reasons, I'm so proud to propose. Thank you.
3 seconds. Ready? Okay. Third speaker from opposition team.
Okay.
Tupino, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Please,
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Dear judges, the ideas promoted by the opposition team would all be true if we lived in a perfect world. If we lived in a world where the example that we brought in our context weren't true. We said that on the 25th of April, Antonio Scurati was censored by the public broadcast because he wanted to give a speech against the government that he thought was fascist. We brought the example in the past of the McCarthyism movement, the silenced journalists because they wanted to give the audience the whole idea of the reality they were living in. We brought the example of Russia that is manipulating information for their citizens because they do not want to them to acknowledge the truth that they're in a unfair war. What they're saying would all be true, and we would agree with that if we didn't live in this world. We do. No, thank you. They did not engage with the reality that we brought. They did not, in fact, consider the world we're living in, because if they did, they would acknowledge the fact that the public broadcast, as it is today, does not give the truth to the audience. For example, we brought an example of this, and they did not acknowledge the fact that what they're saying is not correct in our reality. They said that by European law, public broadcasting, yes.
So, are you saying that private-owned broadcasts are not biased, so we should not abolish them?
What I'm saying is that private broadcasting allows people from all that have different opinion to express those, whilst the public broadcasting only allows people to express ideas that are consistent with the ideas of the government. And that is the definition that you agreed on of public, that is relating to the government. Public broadcasting only expresses the idea of the government. It does not allow any other people to express their ideas. And this was brought about by our team, and your team did not engage with the fact that the information that is brought in public broadcast is biased. It's biased because it does not allow any other people to express their opinion. It is used as a means of propaganda, and it conveys the idea of the people that they only should follow the idea of the government. There is, in a world where that we are no, thank you. In the world that we are describing to you, which is our world, the television and broadcast only allows people to follow the idea of the government. But let's say that what you said is true, so that we live in a perfect world where the public broadcast only tells the truth because they're legally bound to that. The information given may also be true. They may be true. They may be objective, but the presentation in which they're given it's wrong because they oblige people that do not agree with them to shut up and not express their opinion. Because this is what public broadcast does, and you did not engage with this. I would like to give you an image. Our worst word, the word we are describing. We would in this word, as the opposition team said, we are censoring the governments. That is not true, although, because that is not true what they said, that the government only has the public broadcast to express their opinion. They can do propaganda, they can no, thank you. They can do speeches in front of people. They can travel amongst people in the squares to tell their opinion. They can print. They can do many things to express their opinion. But they shall not silence the voices that express opinion that diverge. Just a second, that diverge from their opinion. And this is what the public broadcast does. So it should be abolished. Yes.
So, following your reason, if the state have many ways to express their opinions, therefore propaganda, shouldn't we abolish all of the state things, all of the things that the state owned?
What I'm saying is that by expressing their opinion in public broadcast, they are silencing voices. That is the problem. That they are censoring others' opinion. In the newspapers, for example, we can find different opinions because newspapers are a place where everyone can express an opinion because the journalists write those, so they can express others' opinion. We should not abolish everything. We should abolish public broadcast. But let's come back to our worst case scenario. In our worst case scenario, we are shutting down a way that the government has to express their ideas. They will still have others, but the citizens wouldn't need to pay for a service that they do not want because people have stopped watching public broadcast. Especially after what happened with the Scurati case, people have stopped and they need no thank you, and they still have to pay for the service because it's a service of the state. In our worst case scenarios, we would shut down a way that the government has to express their opinion, but it would also shut down a way in which the governments can silence those who do not agree with them. In their best case scenario, the governments will still use public broadcast to tell the truth, their truth, as I said, but they would manipulate the information that are given to the citizen. The information, which is the official information because it's public from the government, would be manipulated. The people wouldn't be given the truth, they would be given their truth, and we do not stand by this.
Do I?
No, thank you. I would like to reaffirm what we said. We said the abolition of the public broadcast would prevent censorship because everyone could have because with its abolition, we would give everyone the right to express their opinion, to say what they want. We would give true information to the people because everyone should be entitled of expressing their opinion. We should abolish public broadcast because it is too instrumentalized by politics, as we explained with our examples of the Russia, of McCarthyism in America, and of Scurati. And we should abolish that because it lives away from the shoulders of the citizen. And this is because citizens are obliged to pay for a service that they do not want and they do not agree with. And with this, I conclude my speech and I thank you for the attention.
7 and 35. So, we have the third speaker from opposition team. Ready?
Yes.
Okay, anyone?
So, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Before starting with my rebuttal speech, I want to restate what have been the answers to 2 of my POIs by the proposition team. First, the one about the par condicio scandal, and the response from the proposition was that it was totally about on RAI, sure, but if it was that bias, RAI and the public broadcasting and manipulating us as the proposition team is depicting to us, it would have not been talked about. So it is not biased. So if the public broadcasting were so biased as the proposition team is saying, they wouldn't have talked about the par condicio scandal on their own public broadcasting. So what does it mean? It means that it's not biased as they're depicting us. And the second contradiction on the POI to the first proposition speaker is that the government voice could be transferred to private broadcasts. So the big contradiction lies in the fact that it means that the same biased government you're depicting will now drive the private broadcasts. So all your model is falling apart now because the biased governments you've depicted now will drive the private broadcasts. So seeing that the private broadcast will be the only source of information in your world, that those would still be biased. Why? Because will be driven by the governments. Why? Because this was the response by just a second. This was the response by the proposition. Yes.
So you do agree with us that the governments manipulated information?
No, I do not agree with it, but I'm saying that even if they manipulated the information, they would still be, your model would still be falling apart. So now I've shown you that the problem you have identified is government's bias, but first it does not exist, and responding again to your POI, even if it not existed, you're not solving the problem. And now I'll show you how it worsens it. So I'll divide the rebuttal speech into 2 main parts, the one about censorship and the second about influence. Censorship. What is censorship? It is silencing a voice, here in delivering, broadcasting and news. So it has to be done if the contents are wrong or biased. But first, the governments are the most reliable. As shown by the Book of Facts Ipsos survey in 2023, it says what is the difference between the trustworthiness of public and private sources on TV news. So public, 93% of real and factual news. Private, 47%. What does it mean? It means that no, thank you. It means that the government is more reliable than the private broadcasting. So first, it is the most reliable. But second, even if it was not the most reliable, you're still silencing an important voice, the one that runs our country. No, thank you. Or you'll be shifting it to private ones. So there are two consequences. First, again, your contradictions, because they will still be run by governments as the answers to of my POI, or if not, the opinions of private broadcasting's directors, no thank you, would be spread. So even private broadcastings, if not directed and driven by the governments, would still be biased. Why? Because they'll only spread the directors of their private broadcasting's opinions. So they would still be biased. And I'll prove you why this is worse in my next point, so the one about influence. In fact, no thank you, they have said that the state influences people, but first, the state does nothing but giving knowledge to people, and this knowledge is reliable and it is objective. But why all the two things are the same? Because if it is reliable, you can trust it. If you can trust it, it means that it is the truth, and if it is the truth is objective. So no thank you. Again, the Ipsos survey has shown, as I have already said, that the public broadcasting is more reliable than the private one. So it means that it gives actually knowledge, and this knowledge is both reliable and objective. And the second, and even if all I've just said is wrong, so in fact the public one is reliable in absolute and more reliable than the private one, it would still be beneficial, or at least it would not bring harm. So what does it mean? That it does influence, but I'll prove you that it is not true. So let's divide the two types of countries: the democratic ones that respect freedom and rights, and the totalitarians ones that do not respect rights. What happens in the first ones? Public broadcasting is the way that the state uses in order to, apart from giving info, to spread values in order to maintain the public order. These are the same values that we find in the laws and in the constitution, so it is beneficial because it is an effective way for the state in order to spread these values, in order to maintain the public order. So this is why it would be beneficial for the democratic ones. No thank you. What about the totalitarian ones? It is the proposition has brought forward the example of Russia, but just a second. But as shown by my first speaker, the problem there is not about the public broadcasting itself, but the whole society that is completely manipulated. So, for example, for what concerns propaganda, people cannot even express any idea different from the government ones, that they would be imprisoned. So your proposal is useless because it wouldn't solve the problem in these countries. Yes.
Russia right now is a democracy, but they still manipulate information through public broadcast. How do you engage with that?
Actually, in Russia we found everything but not democracy, because in fact Putin does nothing but directing and manipulating the society, and it can be seen not only in public broadcasting but even in journals, in schools, and even in workplaces. So it is not a democracy, and so it is not respected. Democratic values are not respected there. Now the last point is about the public sources that have been said about being biased. So the examples of Serena Bortone and general overall piloted news. I'll bring 4 layers of refutation about it. First, we have to acknowledge that everything could be biased. So what do you want to do? Do you want to abolish every source of news in order to avoid this problem? Well, I think you wouldn't agree on that. Second, the fact that the private broadcasting is even more biased than the public ones. What happens in America? In America happens that Fox is from the right wing, the Republicans, while the NBC is from the left wing, the Democrats. 2 out of 3 people in USA do not know where and how to find reliable sources, because they are too different, they are too manipulated by the two parties. So what does it mean? It means that even the sources there are manipulated, and even more than what happens for the public broadcasting, even assuming that what you're saying was true. So, and it also proves the fact that your Marlowe example is actually out of this debate, because it was not about public broadcasting but a private one. The last point is about, the third point is about the private difference between private and public, because the private cannot be attacked while the public one can. Why? Thanks to the public shame, because if, for example, people know that the information there are biased, will not watch anymore the TV then, and so it goes against the country's, the state's will. So it's actually what doesn't happen. And in order to conclude, I want to bring our worst case scenario. In fact, if you, again, with the contradiction, the government's heads are going to influence, would still influence by establishing private broadcasting, so you would still not solve the problem. Thank you.
8:26. Okay. Okay. So, last part of this debate. So, last speaker from opposition team, Jacobet. Please take the floor. Thank you.
Yes. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1 now. Dear judges, let me walk you through the course of this debate, highlighting the main points of clash. Firstly, we want to highlight the censorship aspect that was brought up in this debate, with a huge contradiction on the proposition side, because firstly, they highly complained about how the public broadcasting and the state are so bad in censoring other people. But then what do they want to do? They want to also censor the voice of the state, which is crucial, as we've seen, to gain objective truths. But again, they go on with their contradiction, stating that, oh well, actually the voice of the state wouldn't be lost, it would go on sale and be on a private broadcast. But then, if our public broadcast is so bad, how they will still keep on manipulating the public, as they say. And this was shown in all the speeches of our debaters. I would like to highlight the point of the bias of the public broadcast. As we have seen, we have shown how everything could be biased and nothing is exclusive. So even the private broadcast that they defend so much could be biased. And so what we want to do to also abolish those and have no source of information. But also we have shown through the data, the Ipsos poll, that 93% of trustworthy news come from the public, and while only 47% are from the private broadcast. So the public is less biased, and also it is less biased because it is legally bound to telling objective truths, as we have said, with the European Union values and and with the European values. And also, public broadcast is held to a completely different standard by the public, not only by law but also by the public. And this goes on our last point of clash, which is the reliability of informations. They are going to be more reliable on the public broadcast because they are objective and they are not polarized. They don't take part. While instead, in the private in the private broadcast, they take sides because people who own the broadcasts have opinions. They have different political opinions, and that is valid. But it is also valid in public broadcasts to be made up of objective truths that are not influenced. So let's look at the words that were depicted during this debate by both teams. So in their world, biased public broadcasts, as they depict them to be, are going to other broadcasts. So even the problem that they're presenting with such atrocity, like propaganda, manipulation, is not going to be solved, but just passed on another broadcast. So even if the problem was so bad, so huge as they would say, their proposal does not solve it. But this is actually also the situation that they're depicting is not this deep, is not this outrageous, as we have shown with the par condicio example that they actually brought, because then the par condicio was read on national TV by the journalists on the state-owned television. So it's not actually biased. And lastly, let's look at our world where everyone has a voice. The state has its own voice that presents objective truths to the citizens, while instead there are other private-owned broadcasting news outlets that let people know different opinions and different points of views, so that all citizens can have the objective truths and then opinion, so they can form their own critic points of views in a more global way. And this is why we are so proud to oppose.
4 and 17. Yeah. Okay. So, the very last speech of this debate. Bob, please, the last speaker from the opposition team. Please.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon again. Dear judges, during this debate, two different points of views have come up and they have emerged. From the opposition point of view, states are legally bound to follow the rules of not silencing people, of not censoring people, but and to tell the truth, because of the fear of being processed. But the opposition point of view, the opposition word, is actually a utopian word. Because we demonstrated to you the reality of facts. We actually took into consideration how our world is actually right now and not a fantasy world. We demonstrated through the examples of Russia, of Italy, of USA, that the states manipulate the information or do not display it in part, which are fundamental to understand the complete view of the situation, especially when it comes to political matters. So we demonstrated to you that these fundamental laws, which are so important in our world, in our states, in our governments, are not actually respected in the reality of facts. And this leads us to the second point of clash, which is where we find more political opinions. Because for the opposition side, more political opinion are found with the public broadcasting, because in this way more debates will be able to put in practice. They can start because of many different opinions, because they believe that what is reliable is also objective. But we demonstrated that the public broadcasting does not help with the more political opinions, because they are controlled by the state, and because some opinions are not only manipulated but also silenced. This is exactly what we have demonstrated, because we also demonstrated that the adjective reliable is the synonym for true, not for objective. because what's reliable is the info, but the presentation of it is what is instrumentalized, and it is what is maybe even censored by the state. This is the problem. This is the problem because it influences the citizens and it doesn't give them a clear and whole display of the political situation. So we actually demonstrated to you that without the political broadcasting, more opinions will be present, and that they would not be silenced anymore because the state would not have an influence on the public programs. While for the proposition team, the public programs was not biased at all, and it was not. And even if it were, then it would only have added to the situation, while we demonstrated that it only subtracts to the situation because it only brings more problems to the citizens, which are not given a clear view of the situation. And so I would like to conclude by saying that we actually gave you all the objective information to prove that our actual world is a world in which voices are silenced and are manipulated. And we believe that no one should be silenced, the voice of no one should be manipulated. And this can only happen if we abolish public broadcasting. Thank you for listening.
3 minutes and 49 seconds. Ready?